Chapter 23. Path Chosen. Valerius returned to High Reach through the tunnels and secret passages that connected all parts of the city, staying out of sight of the populace, his claw, and the politicians who were undoubtedly looking for him. He had even made it up to his quarters in the highest tower without anyone seeing him. He thought that he was in the clear. His shoulders relaxed at the thought that he had successfully evaded everyone and could get some rest now that he knew Caden was safe. For now, so long as he was working. After work was when Caden planned something. Hopefully, it was something innocent, some well-intentioned but ill-thought-out plan to help someone. He'd be there to get Caden out of trouble.
We will?
Raziel opened one eye, the red glow not quite sulphurous, but honestly questioning.
Do we not have a kingdom to run? A world to order? Are the childish machinations of the White Dragon shifter of such interest?
We have to keep him safe, Valerius answered.
Why? He is a dragon shifter like we are. He is small, true. But how is that our problem?
Raziel didn't sound angry, as it had in the past. He is in our territory.
We can make him leave our territory.
He is our citizen, Valerius growled. Why should we make one of our own citizens leave? Are we incapable of handling him? Both red eyes were open now. They searched Valerius's soul for the reason behind his passionate statement. Valerius knew this.
You wish him to stay?
Raziel stated. He is not leaving on his own, unless we intend to physically throw him from our territory and somehow bind him from not coming back. He is staying, Valerius pointed out.
You wish him to stay?
Raziel repeated. I have no desire for him to go. He is interesting. Valerius narrowed his eyes. Besides, why would I want another of the dragon shifters to have the advantage of him?
Advantage?
Raziel raised its head.
Weakness, you mean?
No, not altogether, Valerius said, hesitant even to admit that. Let us say that Ilarion gained him. Raziel reared back, eyes blazing.
He would choose Ilarion?
Valerius cocked an eyebrow. Over us, you mean?
He would never choose Ilarion.
Sulphurous fires lit in Raziel's throat. But if he did, Ilarion would simply imprison him. He would have the power that the mating brings, but none of the weaknesses. Valerius pointed out.
He would never.
If it was seeing someone hurt, or mating with Ilarion, which one do you think he would choose? Valerius interrupted. Black smoke surrounded Raziel until only its red eyes could be seen. Their conversation about Caden was at an end. For now, Valerius said. But we must make a decision about what we are going to do in regards to him. Raziel said nothing, but as he disconnected from listening so intently to the spirit, he heard other voices. They were coming from inside his own quarters. Like Raziel, he reared back and smoke would have poured from his nose. Who would dare be in his quarters without his permission? Shioni, you must be behind this. She had tried to track him down that morning. She'd wanted to talk about the mate issue and what they were going to do about the White Dragon shifter and a million other concerns. He'd avoided her. She'd eventually decided to beard the dragon in his den. He froze in the foyer, hand on the doorknob, unease threading through him. He was just about to turn around and head back into one of the secret passages to escape, when Shioni opened the door, revealing him to all the people inside his room. Well, she was not going to get to him. He would have his sleep without being pestered. He turned to leave.
Your Majesty, we were just talking about you.
She beamed. Valerius felt like a deer in headlights. If the headlights came from people such as the President Goodfellow, Prime Minister Stanton, and the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, the raven shifter Crispin St. John. Valerius would never admit it, but he retreated a step. She only reached and grasped his wrist. She wasn't going to let him flee his responsibilities. You brought people to my rooms. My private rooms. Valerius muttered as the Sphinx shifter pulled him into those rooms that had been invaded by pests.
Indeed,
she whispered.
It was the only place I was certain you would return to at some point, and you must do some ruling today.
He warned her.
And cranky, I'm sure. But you are always cranky.
Another flash of a smile. You would dare say that to your king? His eyebrows rose.
Of course. I am your counselor. I get to tell you many unwelcome truths. Now be a good Black Dragon King and come meet with two of the world's leaders and the greatest legal mind in this hemisphere,
she said, still beaming at him. She shut the doors behind them, then joined his guests. The two world leaders and Justice bowed low while Shione lowered her head. Please rise, Valerius said gruffly as he brushed past them to the wine rack. He opened a bottle of red wine and poured himself a large glass. He did not offer them any. He didn't want to encourage them to stay. It wasn't quite noon yet, but he had a feeling he was going to need alcohol to survive this meeting. The only thing that was sustaining any bit of a good mood was the memory of his conversation with Caden. The young man had taken his criticism of his naivete and innocence rather well. At Caden's age, he would have heard none of it. He probably would have tried to punch whoever was giving him that advice. But Caden was not violent. The young man seemed to think, if one was simply earnest and said what one truly thought, that others would do the same and act in the best for everyone. But that was not how life worked. Yet he himself felt drawn to Caden's obvious goodness. He'd be eaten alive by these people. Valerius turned and seated himself at the head of the long table. Setting his glass of wine down, he regarded his visitors evenly. Why are you here? He was not surprised when President Goodfellow stepped forward and took a seat to his right.
We are here about the boy, the white dragon shifter.
Valerius gave her a stony look. She'd already revealed to the others that she'd seen Caden outside his door last night. Could she keep nothing to herself? In some ways it surprised him that she would reveal this information to anyone else. He thought for sure that she would try to use it to benefit the United States in some way. But she was as earnest as Caden was in some ways. The Prime Minister took the seat opposite her on Valerius's other side. We are also here because of the news that all the dragon shifters have left their territories and are making their way, seemingly, to Reach. The Chief Justice, who did not sit down but instead slowly circled the table, hands behind his back, eyes going everywhere, taking everything in, even as he seemed completely uninterested, said nothing at all. Why are you here, Justice St. John? Valerius asked. News travels fast in the Raven and legal community, as I'm sure you know. Justice St. John gave a thin smile. He was a man who looked to be in his 80s, but St. John was far older than that. He had been a lawyer in England when his spirit found him. He looked benevolent, but anyone who looked long enough into those sharp blue eyes would see that there was an incredibly shrewd brain behind them. Shrewdness did not always mean goodness, however, though Valerius had to admit he was just. A new dragon shifter interests the judiciary because, well, the very basis of our new society after the war was the determination that the world was to be divided equally among the dragon shifters.
The 8 dragon shifters.
President Goodfellow corrected. No, Madam President, it does not list any number. It only says that the world will be divided equally amongst the dragon shifters. He corrected her with that dry, legal tone that stopped many people in their tracks. So, for right now, it is divided 8 ways. But legally, the white dragon shifter would have every right to have it divided into 9. Silence fell at the table. Valerius immediately thought about Caden's statements, that he had no interest in having his own territory, that he wanted to remain here. No dragon shifter, not even him, would give up any of his territory. So if Caden had felt otherwise, war would have been inevitable. War among beings who could shatter continents. Others, though, want him to have a territory so that they could control him and it. I won't allow that to happen. I see, Valerius said as he drained his glass. He stood up and poured another. He continued not to offer anyone else any.
Would you all like something to drink?
Shione asked, which of course she would. She always stepped in when his rudeness rose. There were demurs all around, which Valerius was both annoyed and grateful for. Grateful because he did not want to share his wine with these people. It was his wine. It was a special blend that was made just for him that he treasured. But he was annoyed because it made him drinking at this hour seem inappropriate and somehow wrong. So he drained half the glass and topped it off. He was not ruled by convention, and the wine could not make him drunk.
Why are the dragon shifters coming here? Is it because they believe that the territories need to be redefined to accommodate the white dragon shifter? Did you ask them here?
President Goodfellow asked. Her hands were on the table and they curled into fists. Her concern radiated off of her. Even Ilarion has left his lair and is coming. What do the dragon shifters want? Prime Minister Stanton asked. His eyes were fixed on Valerius too. Without blinking, and tension had his back ramrod straight. Obviously, we know that the introduction of a new dragon shifter would interest them, but physically coming here is unexpected and unprecedented, Justice St. John said. I suppose we should be glad that they are not mobilizing their people to fight, but coming themselves. Valerius let out a sharp bark of laughter as he sat down in his chair. You think we dragons need anyone else when we intend to fight? He shook his head, his long black hair falling across his chest. I should have let them demonstrate our power more to all of you during the war, if such an intelligent being as yourself, Justice St. John, believes we need backup. So they're coming here for war? The Prime Minister looked pale. President Goodfellow appeared as if she might leap up to mobilize the U.S. military to action. But if the other dragons were coming for war, that would do nothing. No, they are not here to fight, he answered them.
Did you check out the Merman series I mentioned? If you want to read more, especially about Amrys, Gabriel's ancestor who tragically lost his human lover, he gets his own story in The Merman 2, House of Air. Amrys has already loved and lost a human, and never intends to open his heart again. But when the mare rulers command Amrys to find other mare-human hybrids, he must walk among them once again. And it's on land where he meets Spencer Long, a hybrid student whose ancestry comes from his family's ancient enemy. He does not wish to experience the pain of losing a lover again, but he can't deny the bond that's starting to form the instant they meet. This Merman sequel is complete, and you can read the entire 48 chapters as a member of my serial site, wraithrain.com. I'll post the link in the notes.
There was a general relaxing of the figures around the table. Those shrewd raven shifter eyes were on him again, and Valerius knew that Justice St. John saw much, even as Valerius tried to hide his thoughts from him. His gaze shot to Shione, and she inclined her head slightly. She wanted him to tell them the truth about the mating. In truth, he couldn't hide this from everyone and claim it was shifter business. The 7 other dragon shifters surrounding his territory would terrify everyone. They needed to prepare the populace for this, even if Caden was still intent on remaining anonymous and unmated forever.
They will not leave until they have an answer from him, one way or the other.
Raziel muttered.
We will be besieged.
Weren't you the one saying that you wanted to be the only dragon shifter on this planet? Valerius reminded him.
We could take them out one by one. This would merely be more difficult if they are grouped together and work with one another.
Raziel pointed out. So not even the great Raziel thinks it can take down all 7 dragon shifters? Valerius didn't know why he was taunting Raziel. He would want to take them out himself if they remained encircling his territory.
It would be difficult.
You do know why they're coming, don't you?
President Goodfellow asked tentatively. They are coming here, Valerius began, swallowing down more wine before continuing, to court the white dragon shifter. President Goodfellow let out a gasp.
Court?
Whatever she had thought he would say, that was not it. He didn't blame her. He was as shocked as they were about it still, though he was getting used to the idea, toying with it. Prime Minister Stanton's forehead furrowed. In a romantic way? Justice St. John said nothing, but waited for him to explain further. He used these silences effectively in court, and it worked here as well. Some of the courting will be romantic. Others will simply be strategic. The white dragon shifter is to be the mate of one of us. Bonding with him will grant much greater strength to us, but also it will weaken us, Valerius explained, not liking talking about weakness to these people. I take it that if the mate is harmed in some way, then the dragon he is bonded with will suffer harm as well. Justice St. John guessed. It was an excellent and correct guess. It just showed that his mind was as sharp as Valerius thought and feared. Valerius merely nodded.
A true mate? Not some kind of fairy tale?
President Goodfellow asked, more to herself than to anyone else. When the others looked at her, she explained.
My daughter is in love with these werewolf shifter books, movies, and television shows. Surely you've heard of True Alpha, the show where the alpha of the Cold Moon Pack finds its mate, and it's... Well, never mind. I've only heard of mates with werewolves, never with other types of shifters. And I've even heard that it isn't really true of werewolves at all.
She only smiled.
I've watched that show myself. It's quite romantic. Werewolves are in general very romantic beings for all their brawn. But while it is rare, there are signs of true mates in the werewolf population. But this type of bond between the dragon shifters seems unique.
And should have been revealed to me long ago. Valerius muttered at Raziel, who said nothing. Valerius inclined his head once more. Let us not confuse what this is with the romantic nonsense of fiction. The white dragon shifter is not fated to be with any one of us. It gets to choose. If it were to choose, it might foolishly do so out of a belief it is a love match. And Valerius could readily see Caden doing exactly that. So why did such a thought, other than making him want to roll his eyes at the innocence of it, also cause red to flood his vision and the urge to rend someone to pieces? But for the established dragon shifters, the courting will spring out of a desire to extend their power, even if such a thing is very dangerous. As you no doubt observed from watching many times the videotaped battle between myself and the white dragon, the white dragon is very small. Killing it would be easy. And in his mind, he imagined the great green dragon, Ilarion, snapping that slender white neck, and seeing the white dragon fall lifeless to the ground. He shook himself. Even imagining it was horrific to him. He drained the rest of his wine. So all the other dragon shifters are coming here to show the white dragon what they have on offer? To seduce it away so that they can be more powerful, Prime Minister Stanton clarified. So that they can try and rival you, King Valerius. Valerius's hand tightened around the thin glass stem of the wineglass and felt it break under his fingers. I have it on good authority that the white dragon shifter has no interest in bonding with anyone or having any territory of its own. It wishes to remain quite anonymous and left alone. I have heard that as well, Justice St. John said as he proceeded to circle the table. It is also my understanding that it wishes to remain in your territory, King Valerius. but there was some question as to whether you wish it to remain. Shione stepped in quickly here and said,
King Valerius has made no determination of any sort, and you should not be listening to rumors on the subject.
Justice St. John paused in his pacing and lifted his chin. We all know how territorial dragons are. They cannot bear to be within one another's territory for long. So I am assuming that there is some truth to this rumor. But why leave us with only rumors? Why not just say what your intentions are, King Valerius? Will you allow this young dragon shifter to stay here or not? It is your decision, after all. President Goodfellow leaned forward on the table.
You should allow it to stay, even if it does not choose to mate with any of the other dragon shifters. Its presence here will ensure greater stability for the territory and greater protection. 2 dragons are better than 1.
It is not a fighter. You saw how small it is in comparison to me. Its nature is not one where it would be any good in a fight. Valerius answered her, and he did not want Caden near any other dragon shifter in a fight. He wanted Caden safely away from such a battle.
But that's not entirely true, is it?
It was Shione who spoke, which startled him. Normally, she would never dispute his words in front of others, but she thought it was necessary here and now.
I believe that it would fight to keep people safe. It might not fight for territory or power, but to keep people safe? Absolutely. I believe it would give its life for that. Don't you think I'm correct, King Valerius?
Valerius reluctantly nodded. Yes, it would at that. For what good it would do.
Unless you and he were mated.
President Goodfellow leaned forward as she said this.
That would increase your strength, ensuring that no other dragon shifter, such as Alarion, would dare attempt anything against this territory.
He does not dare now. Valerius growled low and allowed some of Raziel's fire to appear in his eyes.
No, but that could change. The White Dragon Shifter is a great prize. If he could lure...
The White Dragon Shifter would never choose him. Valerius shouted and was on his feet. He slammed the broken wineglass onto the table where it was crushed to a powder beneath his palm. It is staying here, in my territory, under my protection. Understood. He glared at all the participants in this conversation. President Goodfellow blinked owlishly at him. Prime Minister Stanton tugged at his tie as if it were too tight. Justice St. John pursed his lips. Shione was smiling. Am I understood? He repeated. Yes. Oh, yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. So long as the White Dragon does not choose to mate with anyone else. Justice St. John pointed out dryly. I said, he has no... He is young. The Raven Shifter pushed, even under his sulphurous glare. And there is also the issue of territory and the law. Combine this mating business and that, and, well, it is an explosive combination. We need order, King Valerius. You did that in the past when things were dire. You need to do it now. And he knew that. He realized it. But while the exposure of shifters to the humans had seemed inevitable, and so had given him a long time to devise what to do, Caden had just appeared yesterday, and he'd had no idea he was coming. Everything was in upheaval, and there was no clear way forward. And maybe this was why he said something he never would have usually said. I will need all 3 of your counsel on the matter. While it is my decision in the end, I will hear what you have to say. I am at your disposal, King Valerius. The Raven Shifter bowed. And I am certain that these world leaders are as well.
Of course.
President Goodfellow rose to her feet and looked at Valerius with such earnest interest. We are your loyal servants in this. Prime Minister Stanton added as he, too, rose. Good. Now, I would ask that you leave me for... Go, think, go plan, come back when you have some ideas, he said as he turned towards the sunlit balcony. He heard them assure him that they would do just that. He did not look at them, just waved them away. Once the door was closed behind him, he heard the soft tap of Shione's shoes on the stone floor. She stepped up beside him, still smiling. "Why are you still smiling?" He snapped at her. She put her arm through his.
You finally admitted that you want Caden to stay. That is step 1.
He frowned. "And what is step 2? And what are we stepping towards?" But she only smiled as she answered him.
We will see. But you have started on a road. I cannot see the end yet, but it is good to be starting. We're like the little publisher that could, and do a lot of work for such a small team. Wraith Rain puts out new releases, sales, new art, previews of upcoming stories, and at least 2 free books or manga every month. If you don't want to miss anything, you have 2 options. One is to keep coming back to our YouTube community tab, which we use as a blog for quick announcements and polls. The other is to join our mailing list, where we go into even more detail. The link to both the community tab and our mailing list form is in the notes.